Today I was lucky enough to interview Edward Moore Kennedy Jr. He is an American lawyer and politician, and he currently represents Connecticut's 12th Senate District in the Connecticut Senate. He's a son of late Senator Edward M. Ted Kennedy from Massachusetts, and a nephew of President John F. Kennedy and Senator Robert F. Kennedy. This means he is cousins with Chris Kennedy, who happens to be running for governor in Illinois. It was a great conversation. Now I just want to transition over to your cousin Chris, who is running for governor. In a letter that you sent out to his community supporting him, you say, quote, "He believes that people with disabilities deserve an equal chance at pursuing the American dream." Do you see individuals with disabilities today living out the American dream, and what progress do you think we need to make, and what can Chris do to kind of make that
Well, I think for one thing, people with disabilities do not want pity. They don't want a handout. They want an equal opportunity to participate. But in order to do that, we need an education and we need a job. And I think when I talk about that Chris wants to ensure that everybody has an equal opportunity to pursue the American dream, we know that in Illinois and in other states around the country, you know, the zip code you're born in, the family that you're born in, the type of, situation that you have can predetermine the type of life that you're going to lead. Mm-hmm. And Chris is all about fairness. He's all about equality. And that's why he believes that regardless of where you're from or your financial situation or your family background, every child in this state deserves an equal opportunity to pursue the American dream.
So speaking of equal opportunities, the Women's March is happening here in Chicago this weekend and all throughout other areas of the country. Are you a feminist, and do you think feminism is important right now?
Yes, I am a feminist. You know, it's interesting because a lot of people think that men can't be feminists, but that's not true. I'm glad you asked that question. I believe, and I'm a parent of a young woman, of a daughter who I have really tried my hardest to raise to believe that there's nothing that she can't do. Mm-hmm. And there's no challenge, there's no job that she can't do just as well as anybody else. So I'm very lucky that I'm married to a very strong woman who is a lot smarter than I am and who teaches me every day that we all have a lot to offer. Mm-hmm. So I do plan, I'm looking forward to marching tomorrow morning.
Awesome.
In the Women's March, because I think that although it is a women's march, I think it's important that feminism and equality is not just a woman's issue, it's also a man's issue too, because we all benefit when people are treated equally in our society.
Right. So also, speaking of Chris, as I'm sure you know, he and his wife, Sheila, run Top Box Foods, which is a nonprofit organization that helps areas that are in the poor areas of Chicago and a little bit outside of that have access to affordable, healthy food. From my observation about the campaign, he kind of distances that and keeps it a little bit more quiet. That he's serving the community like this. Do you think this way of kind of doing it humbly has lived on in the Kennedys' legacy all the way back from when John Kennedy was president?
Well, Chris and Sheila have done an amazing job at Top Box Foods and ensuring that families in this region have access to low-cost quality food, because we all know in many parts of this city, it's their food deserts. The only food that people can access is fast food and is not good, nutritious, affordable food. So, Chris does not like to toot his own horn. He doesn't like to talk about all the successes that he's made in this area because he's got a lot of humility. And humility is something that I pray for all the time, because I think we all need to be humble and work towards leading an honest, humble life. But now it's our job as friends of Chris to talk about that and to say, this is one of the many examples of the way Chris and Sheila quietly, but in a very powerful way, are slowly changing the lives of people in the greater Chicago region.
To conclude talking about Chris, what do you think, what would you say to undecided voters right now who are still deciding between Chris and the candidates running against him? How could you convince them that Chris is the candidate who should be the future governor of Illinois?
Well, this morning we had a breakfast where we had many of community leaders and business leaders from across the city of Chicago attend in the final 8 weeks of the campaign. And I talked about 3 qualities that I thought were the essential qualities of any good political leader that I think are Chris's strengths. One is that Chris is a good listener. Right. We need people who listen. Too many times politicians, all they do is talk all day long. They don't take the time to listen to what people are really telling them. I've seen that. I know that that's one of Chris's strengths. Secondly, Chris is a fighter. People need to know that somebody is going to wake up and fight for them every single day. You know, Chris, he waited until his mid-50s to run for political office. If this were about him, if this were about his own political ambition, don't you think he would have run a lot earlier? He's doing this for all the right reasons. He's entering public life. And the third is that Chris is a collaborator. Right. And we need people who are going to be able to work together as a team, because the state of Illinois is not going to succeed unless everyone is working together. The business community, the people in public life, public service, the incredible academic institutions that are here in the state of Illinois. Everyone needs to work in concert with one another. And Chris has demonstrated that he has the ability to cross those barriers, to cross the aisle, and put together a winning team for the success of this state.
All right. Just to conclude this interview, I just want to ask, outside of your family members, who are your heroes and why?
Well, I meet people all the time. In my, I serve in the Connecticut General Assembly, and I meet people every single day who are quietly, but in a very powerful way, advocating for the environment, for better schools, for people with disabilities. And I'm inspired by people who I meet, every single day in the work that I do. They're not famous, they don't have a lot of notoriety, but those are the people who are my heroes. Obviously, I being a bone cancer survivor, my heroes are nurses. I mean, yes, the doctors are the brilliant, and the brilliant scientists who come up with the novel therapies, but the people who really deliver and make sure that people like me are able to succeed and support are the people on the front lines, So I do have a soft spot for the nurses who help take care of me.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kennedy. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jay, for having me on your program.
Yeah, thank you.